Hello, good evening. Welcome to this month's episode of Pulse on Property with myself, Mike Holliday, the Investment Manager of Residential Estates. Joining me this evening, to the far right, we have Mr. Michael Johns, our Senior Investment Consultant.
Hi.
We also have Andrew Brassey, one of our Business Development Managers.
Evening. Good evening.
And Jason Guest, another one of our Business Development Managers as well, joining us this evening.
Good evening. Last minute signing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Did we get in there with the window?
Intellectual and
decent
looks.
one.
Is that what it was?
We needed a bit of that for the group. So.
Good evening.
Sign on fee.
Good evening, and thank you everybody for joining us this evening for the third episode of Pulse on Property. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get on with the evening. First of all, we're starting to get a following on our webinars now, so I've got to give a shout out to the Railway Massive. There they go. They've had their shout out. Good evening, Railway Massive. We're on YouTube now, so first time we've actually done this on YouTube, and we're going to continue with these. So if you're watching, obviously like and subscribe to get notifications of future webinars as they come on. Also, as we go through in chat, Abby and the back end of things will be looking at putting links to free blogs, articles, stats, and a lot more as we go through the webinar. We've got guest speakers, we've got a guest host on tonight, which we'll talk about shortly. But in future webinars as well, we've got Adam Harris from CapEx talking next month, talking about stamp duty, and Melissa Ellis, a financial advisor from HL Financial, who can be discussing anything and everything to do with pensions. So if you've got any questions for any future guests, please visit the links that will be appearing in chat shortly. In fact, we've already had a few questions submitted to us for the guys in future webinars. But without further ado,
I think we like to keep these as interactive as possible. So please do pop up this evening any questions that you've got for us. You might agree with stuff we're saying, you might disagree. We want to hear from you all, and especially with our guest speaker as well, which we'll come on to. So pop up, let us know where you're watching from this evening. Hi Josh, I see you popped up there. Delighted to say we are being joined by our guest speaker Tyler Burnett from DNA Financial Solutions, who we as a company, Residential Estates, have worked with for the last couple of years. So a lot of our clients who may be on this evening will have worked with DNA. So Tyler, thanks very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me on.
No worries.
Do appreciate it.
No worries at all. So I thought if you could just give a bit of an overview of yourself and the company for those of you that maybe don't know DNA and yourself.
Yeah, of course. So as already introduced, my name's Tyler. Been working at DNA Financial Solutions for a number of years now. We are a multidisciplinary master broker. We have access to over 500 lenders in the market, which means that we can look to, of course, get you the best financial options out there for yourselves and your clients. Open 7 days a week, of course, the big thing being the packager status, so where you may have your own broker that has access to between 80 and 100 lenders in the market, we have access to those few more complex lenders. So if you are looking at limited company options, for example, you are looking at bridging finance for developments, then the amount of lenders that we can look to use, of course, is more strenuous. I'm, of course, going to be on the webinar today to answer any questions that anyone has. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the mortgage market at the minute, with rates, with timescales, lenders coming in and out, and maybe you want it now, maybe you want it as we go through with more questions that are asked. I'll be more to fill you in with the information that I do have.
No, yeah, that's fantastic, Tyler. So that'll be great. Oh,
We've lost a bit of sound, have we?
we did lose a little bit of audio there. Have we got you back, Tyler?
You have, yeah? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, we can now. We lost a bit of audio. That's fantastic. Yeah, now as we go through, I'm sure there'll be questions that you can answer, and I know there's a lot going on in the marketplace at the minute.
Well, rates are dropping, aren't they? Dropping, he says, by 0.1% or 0.01%. I read today.
Yeah.
They're starting to east down. Would that be right, Tyler?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Whether it be from the announcement with Rishi coming in and more confidence in the market, potentially, I'm not politically inclined in any way whatsoever, but a few of the more high street lenders have reduced rates, and we'd like to see over the long term that rates will eventually start to come down. The banks are battling, of course, with base rate increases. They're pricing with the projections of the base rate going up. Originally, it was announced at 1% come November. There's now announcements that it could only be the 0.75%. So although they're small increments, every little helps, I suppose. Over the long term, we do see base rates, the rates reduce.
And surely there's got to be an opportunity for a lot of lenders out there at the moment. It's a market that has struggled a little bit. So there's an opportunity certainly for new lenders. A question I had: have you seen new lenders come into the market, Tyler?
100%. More of your specialist bracket of lenders have come in and provided more solutions. When we were talking back 6 months ago, when limited company buy-to-let rates may have been between 3 and 3.5%, those specialist lenders that most are private funded, it just wasn't a market for them to get in touch with. They'll run the bridging finance at a higher rate. They'll work on more complex properties and projects. But now, as they've seen that the rates have increased month on month, more of the specialist lenders are now kind of sticking their hooks in and going, we want a bit of this, we'll do some of this. The benefit that you've got with some of the specialist lenders, though, is their criteria. So whether it be holiday lets, where they're able to go off the projections of earnings for the holiday let and not just use the standard rental figure, or meaning you can lend more money, or whether it be general criteria such as, okay, are you a first-time investor into the market? Maybe it's your first ever property purchase. Someone on the high street may not be geared up to do something like that. But the specialist lenders are happy to take what is perceived as more of a risk with it being your first purchase, but will charge a little bit of a premium than where you could have got 6 months ago.
Did you find on that, Tyler, it's more maybe the computer says yes or no? They will take more of a personal view, the specialist lender?
Yeah, 100%. High street decisions are run by computers, and specialist lending decisions are run by people. Does the story make sense, whether it be the complexity of going into short-term letting or looking at adverse credit situations? They will take into account, okay, what's the story? Can we do this? Is it a decision we can make? If you go to the high street and you want to get a buy-to-let mortgage on the high street, it is a simple yes or no, and it's frustrating as mortgage brokers. If there's any other mortgage advisors that may be on tonight, you may know that the headache of going ahead and doing a buy-to-let mortgage or doing even a residential mortgage, getting a fail, it doesn't pass our internal credit scoring, and you don't really get a reason why. It's just a no. So 100% you are right there. The specialist lenders, it's easier to deal with. You get a better answer from them, and it's people making those lending decisions.
Do you find that those specialist lenders are easier to challenge as well, maybe for a second opinion?
100%. They definitely can be a lot quicker in making the decisions, and easy to access. Maybe a lending manager there straight away, just get on the phone with them and then get an answer, or if there's something that's cropped up during the application stage, whether it be the big ones is valuations. Picking an example out of a hat here, let's say we've got a property that's rented out for £700 a month, and this is an actual example, by the way. £700 a month. We have a valuation report back that's come back at £600 a month, but we're able to evidence there that actually, no, it is rented out at this. We were able to get in touch with the lending manager straight away, reverts back to the valuation, the valuer, the surveyors, and we got a response back in 2 days, which was positive for the client, saying, okay, you can evidence the additional rent, happy days. You've got a harder challenge getting something like that away with the high street, of course. I'll just go off facts, figures, there you go. Computer says no.
Yeah. I mean, what we were finding, Tyler, even before this all happened over the last few weeks, is it was a difficult market anyway. And most buy-to-let investors who were investing in investment property, let's say, were unable to get high street offers anyway. So there was only a handful of people that were able to get you sub 3% offers. So actually, that not actually being an option now, a lot of the people that I'm dealing with are looking at, they know what they're going to be paying now. They know that they're going to be paying the higher rate, and that's out in the open. If they're buying a short-term let property, that's really their only way of securing an income, which is actually going to give them a good return after they've paid a 6-7% interest mortgage. So actually, we're probably finding it a little bit clearer now. Yeah, it was more of a statement than a question.
I agree. Yeah.
Sorry, I think the audio went again on that again. Could you just repeat the last little bit?
Yeah, no, I was just saying we're finding it's clearer for people. People they know that they're not going to have the high street options of 2.1% from NatWest or 2.3% from Santander. They know that they've got to have to go a specialist route. So people are going to it with a clearer, sort of more realistic mind frame. I mean, that's what we're finding from our side. I mean, are you finding the people that you're taking on are being sort of more realistic about what they can achieve on the mortgages in this market?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. A few months ago, I might have been dealing with 5%. What's this? I can go to Santander or Barclays and I can get 2%. When in fact, okay, you're dealing with a complex property, short-term let, not the short-term letting complex in itself from a mortgage perspective, but if it is a short-term let mortgage, it's on a limited company, for example, those types of rates just weren't feasible anyway. Yeah. With the rate rises, which I know you're teetering on the point of going into short-term lets here, but it's becoming a more and more viable option looking for those higher yields in the short-term let market. Not just the short-term let market, you've got the holiday letting market, you've got multi-unit properties as well. I'd like to see that's not going to be a thing forever, but yields at the minute are getting squeezed by mortgage rates. If you're just looking to go kind of the standard route of a buy-to-let property. I mean, long-term rents are going to rise to battle this off anyway. This cost is going to be pushed on to the tenants. It can't not be, because then we'll have a glut of properties in the market. Investors still need to invest. There still needs to be that stock of housing for people that need to rent.
Yeah, and I think we spoke earlier, Tyler, didn't we? I mean, sometimes clients have to realise as well, it doesn't mean for your mortgage, let's say your mortgage term is 20 years, it doesn't mean the rates now are there for 20 years. They could be just fixed for the first 1 or 2 years. So hopefully when rates will eventually come down, you'll benefit from that. So like you say, having that benefit of buying your short-term lets and getting around in the first couple, then you've got different options then, haven't you, with it?
100%. You're a property investor. You're going to be a property investor for the next, depending on your age, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. You're going to be dealing with rate rises. We've had the benefit of cheap money for a long time now, realistically, haven't we? Even at 3.5%, it's been very, very cheap money compared to a standard 5, 6, 7% plus yield just on a standard buy-to-let property, depending on location, of course.
So I'm going to jump in. We've got a lot to get through, and Tyler's going to be with us all evening. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them in chat, and I'm sure Tyler would be more than happy to answer as we go through. So just a very quick overview of what we are going to run through. Obviously, we've just gone through a fair bit then, and we're going to get through a lot more as the evening goes through. We're going to have it is Halloween. We're going to have we're going to have a look at some quick Halloween stats relating to property and consumer spending, some property news and views, see what's going on in the world of property. And the world in general. I think there's a lot going on.
We might have a new Prime Minister by the end of this.
Revolving doors.
And then we're going to look at something a little bit quirky as well, and look at the different types of ways of investing with money. So not necessarily property, but if you had £100,000 and you put it into different sectors, whether that be a savings account, stock shares, all of that, how that would have performed this year against property as well. It's quite an interesting piece, isn't it, that we're going to cover later on as well.
It is. So let's crack on with the evening. Happy Halloween to everybody, 2022. I know we haven't dressed up, but we do have Johnsy.
Thank you.
You're going to pick on one of us there, so I'm glad it was.
Was that rehearsed?
John
That I
did
didn't see that in the script.
Yeah, it's been a spooky start to the season. Something sinister has happened to the previous prime ministers. Let's
Proud of
start.
this, aren't you? These puns.
Yes, I am. But
It's interesting though, this
yeah.
first slide, because it does, on a serious note, it looks at what consumers are looking in terms of spending and where to save on. So seasonal stuff like Halloween, I think probably not surprised to see some of those facts that people are cutting back a little bit and maybe prioritising a little bit more. And I know we're slightly biased on the property front, but I'd like to think where you live and is number one priority, and that comes first, and maybe some of these other areas would be hit that way on it. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me too much that some of those numbers have dropped.
Do you celebrate Halloween, Andrew?
No. No, in a word, no.
I'm shocked by that, Andrew.
No trick or treating?
Not personally, no. But we did only today go and buy some Haribo scary faces or something like that from
I think
one
you have
of
to.
the major retailers.
Yeah.
But you're right. You go into any major supermarket today, and it's there, isn't it? So one of the stats I think is it's the third most popular, if that's the right word, event.
I mean, in a serious note, it's a good way to try and kickstart the economy back in. As in, not a good idea. It's there, it's happening, but it's one of those things that's going to help a little bit.
I think it will. I think when you look at the supermarket shelves and what's on it, and people coming out with the pumpkin, not naming names, but we bought a pumpkin today for 57 pence. You think, how can you produce a pumpkin a bit bigger than the thing we've got on the table for 57 pence? Yeah.
But you want people as well spending on stuff, don't you, to get the economy going as well?
Absolutely.
I think with COVID, and again, we're mentioning it, we're going to go there, but then the pandemic, but now people can go out, and obviously people could go out last year or whatever, but now people can go out properly. I would have thought this year, maybe spending, people are going to be perhaps a little bit wary about how much they spend, but I still think they're going to be going out. I certainly know of a few parties that go.
Well, I think you're right. You mentioned trick or treat. I think we will see, because we've eased away from that pandemic, that COVID situation where you can't go out. I think we will see more people out and about.
I think just moving on, a few little stats on Halloween and property. Try and relate it to property as we should do. So having a ghost may enhance the value of your property by £48,000, according to an inventory-based study. If you live in a haunted house, you can sell it for up to £48,000 more than the average street price. So I know you and I have had a discussion about this, and you differ, don't you, Johnsy?
Well, I've also read a lot of articles on the internet that say that if you claim that you're in a haunted house to a buyer, it can decrease the value by as much as 20%. So, I mean, it works both ways. I mean, I would. Would you guys? Would you own up to your house being haunted if you were selling it?
Yeah. Okay. Here's for chat as well. Let's put this out to chat as well, and let's have a discussion. Would you disclose a potential ghost if your house was haunted to buyers?
Well, I'd definitely be selling to start.
Do you think you have to? Do you have to?
Well, you can't. How do you verify you have a ghost? So, if you don't declare it, could you be, prosecuted for not declaring you have a ghost?
I suppose it depends on whether or not the people buying believe in ghosts or not, and if they do
here's
believe.
a question I think Michael's going to ask. Ourselves, the four of us here, Tyler, and people watching tonight. Do you believe in ghosts? Now,
This really is going deep now.
just as a side, and you asked the question, would I declare it? I used to own a cottage in southwest Scotland. One night, I'd had a beer too many, maybe, I have to say. The room, as it in the bedroom, and the room went ice cold. And I saw something. And I, hand on heart, I couldn't tell you it was a ghost. I couldn't tell you what it was, but the room went like ice cold. And something was there. But I'd had a beer.
Maybe you cover it by, if anybody's visiting your house, you say, first things first, do you believe in ghosts? And if they say no, say great. Fantastic. Here's the kitchen. You don't have to worry about it then, do you?
I don't believe in them. Something went on, I have no idea, and I put it down having a beer too many. But something that, as I said, it was almost like ice. It went that cold, the room. But do you, Mike? Do you believe in ghosts?
It's one of those you don't want to.
You don't want to mix
it.
it.
You don't do. Yeah, I don't think I do. But
You've got a long drive home.
Just the old camera, yeah. No.
So, Tyler, put it back to you. Does it affect mortgages? Have you ever heard? Have you had any instances of anything to do with ghosts and?
I really wish I had an interesting story to tell you in regards to this. Realistically, no. I don't know if it's quite as scary as down valuations in reality.
Poor Tyler thought there was going to be serious questions tonight, and then we're asking him about.
What he's joined.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. The second point as well about the house in the film The Conjuring 2, that it rose by more than 100,000 over the last 6 years.
I think that would probably happen regardless of the ghost.
Well,
I think if you're in film,
any programme,
that property gets a wider audience, I guess.
And I think more the area as well. So I was having a bit look at this. So the property is in Enfield, North London, and if you look at the street and the area, they've actually all rose by that amount.
right?
It had nothing to do with the thing, and it's just property's gone up in that area. So
Yeah.
That's how it read the headlines.
Okay, so ghosts. Actually, to be fair, I think I have seen a ghost. Well, I know I've seen a ghost, but yeah, let's
move on.
Let's move on. And I hadn't had a drink, but there you go. So before we move to the next slide, just talk a little bit property news in general. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to talk about in the news. The government, obviously, well, we've joked a little bit about change of Prime Minister, hauntings, what's going on. But in seriousness, I mean, I think it's still too early. We said in last month's webinar, we might have something to say about Truss's government. Obviously, we've now got another change. We've got Sunak Rishi in, and with Sunak's policies and government, I think it's too early to say what's going to happen. Yeah. Well, obviously, it's too early to say. But hopefully that will lead on to webinar episode 4, Pulse on Property episode 4. We might have something to say then, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping with sort of Rishi's economist background that it should bring a bit of stability. I think that the initial market reaction has been positive.
It's been very positive, yeah.
Yeah,
as we mentioned earlier, rates have dropped marginally, but they've started to drop on the strength. Yeah. So the institutions seem to be saying of Sunak coming in and that stability, that economic mindset, maybe.
Yeah. But as you said, Jason, it's very early days, isn't it, that way? So,
yes.
Historically, property is so robust that it tends to look after itself, doesn't it? And whenever you get something that comes in which is a negative, there's usually a positive to follow.
Yeah.
And it's cyclical. It's very robust. And look, you don't see us sulking about it, do you? I mean, we might have had certain things affect the market over the last few weeks, but the spirit in our office has been very high. We haven't seen a downturn in business and the number of inquiries. It's still a very, very positive market. I think actually people are starting to be a little bit more realistic about what they can achieve. I think the market's had a little bit of a shake-up, but...
and I don't think we're any different to other countries. I think all countries have struggled a little bit these last few months, maybe a little bit after effect of COVID and stuff, but it's got to improve that way, and it has started to. So I'm sure it'll be the same.
Spirit in the office, is that in relation to Andrew, or is that to do with Halloween?
It was a little pun there.
I like it.
Glad you picked up on it.
I did. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else did, but I did. There you go. So let's move on. Other things in the news that we saw this month, estate agents fined more than £500,000. 68 estate agents fined more than 500,000 by HMRC for breaching anti-money laundering requirements, AML requirements. Fines totalled £519,645. One agent was also sentenced to 120 hours of unpaid community service and banned from acting as an estate agent for 2 years. Obviously, you can see there, Nick Sharp, Deputy Director of Economic Crime, said, "We are determined to create a level playing field for businesses who play by the rules. That means taking action against the minority of businesses who fail to fulfil their legal responsibilities under the money laundering regulations. Money laundering is not a victimless crime. Serious and organised crime costs the UK billions of pounds every year.
An interesting one, because the 68 who were prosecuted, a number of them weren't actually registered with HMRC. So it's the first time HMRC have gone after people who haven't been registered. And the weight of the fines were on Article 56, which relates to non-registration of their business with HMRC. So it's there. It's just people weren't following the procedures, I think, is the gist of it. But the fines, half a million. The highest was 53,000. And you think, if you get a fine of 53,000, it's quite serious.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it shows the security of UK property.
Yeah, very much.
How strict it is taken, and I think that's why people do come back to invest in the UK. I was looking a little bit online, and it was showing how the numbers are down of the amount of Brits buying holiday homes overseas.
Yes.
Since COVID, and perhaps people feel a bit safer buying in the UK, and these are the sort of reasons why all these checks that go on. There can be a pain maybe as you're going through your purchase, but there's good reason behind it.
Well, very much so. Very much so.
I think what I took from this immediately was that we get a lot of people. Our after sales team get a lot of stick from our buyers about the length of the process and the documentation they need to buy a property, and they have rules that they have to stick with, and they have to get these documents in place. And we have people complaining, I've already submitted that, I've submitted that to so-and-so. There are rules that we have to stick to, and if we don't, then you might not see us in a few years' time if we don't.
Well, I bet, Tyler, you'll be the same. I'm guessing that you have to follow vigorous checks to your clients on the mortgage side of things.
Yeah, 100%. I can feel some of the pain on the client side, where they know their source of funds. It's come from a legal source. It's not a problem. We've just got to check over multiple bank accounts and standard AML checks. Yes, it can be more work than necessary sometimes, but yeah, it's what gives us essentially what is one of the best financial industries in the world within the UK, isn't it? The amount of regulation, for good or for worse, it is. Coming on to the AML point, there's a lender that won't be named that's also been stung for AML checks as well, not doing them, not following the processes, and they've been. Don't know whether or not they've been completely struck from lending for the time being, but they haven't been in the market for 6 to 8 weeks for the time being. So while they're going through their checks internally, and that's caused a problem on them. And like you said, you want to be here in a few years. If you don't follow them procedures, there's not to say that someone like the FCA doesn't maybe not the FCA, but someone doesn't step in, governing body, and it causes, of course, a lot of problems for yours and our business.
And that goes for developers as well, and doing checks on them and making sure they're legit, particularly if clients are buying off plan.
Yeah.
We work with a company called Fact, don't we, that do vigorous due diligence checks on those developers. So, yeah, it can be a headache for all of us, but it is important.
Well, even being members of the West Cheshire Chamber of Commerce, for us it's important, isn't it, that you recognise that you're following those guidelines, and you don't want to be associated with sort of bad practice.
No, and as a company we have a duty of care to the employees, because potentially there's a 2-year jail sentence, isn't it? And,
don't fancy that.
I don't fancy that, no. Nor going to visit whoever is the recipient of it, no. So, as you said, Mike, it can be a pain, but the rules, we have to follow them, and they're there for a reason.
Well, it's for the good of the market as well. We don't want any, let's say, dirty money in the market, which is going to falsely affect the market. And a lot of people who traditionally in the past bought bulk property with through dirty money, let's say, they won't be renting the place out. They'll be just buying it and just sitting on it, and they just want to do that and sell on. But it's going to have a big impact on the prices within that market as well. So,
link to that article is in chat, I see. So again, let's crack on. So with a little bit of, well, I say fun here. This is quite an important topic. And topic of the week, I suppose, or topic of the month, really. We wanted to have a look at the various different types of investment and compare it to property and buying property. So basically investing to protect wealth, what could be achieved with £100,000. We gave our hypothetical 100,000. It is hypothetical. I wish I had 100,000 at the minute, but we gave £100,000 and a time machine to our hypothetical Mr. and Mrs. Smith there last year in October, and let them go back and forward investing in different investable options. You will find shortly the full article and blog post where we go into this in depth in chat. A link to that. But yeah, let's without further ado, let's dive into the results. So first thing that we come to is £100,000 October to October, so October 2021 to October 2022. Put it into a typical savings account. As you can see there, gross return over the year of 4.5%, which on the face of it, it's 4.5%. It's a positive. However, with inflation, we end up with a real-time loss of £5,500 over the course of the 12 months.
And I think this would be the option. People would think, well, it's the safest route.
Yep.
Just put my money into a savings account and keep it safe, so to
I've
speak.
got down here, possibly considered the safest option, maybe not the most lucrative.
But not necessarily the case. And Andrew, I was talking to you, wasn't about this a couple of weeks back, when we were saying how, let's say, of that £100,000, technically at the moment only 85,000 is backed up, so to speak, if there was another incident like there was with Northern Rock all those years ago, where the government had to bail banks out. That's the only amount, isn't it? That's fully protected.
Yep.
So you would lose potentially 15,000.
15,000.
Yes.
And I think, if I'm right on this, it's across multiple streams. So if you look at, say, Lloyds Banking Group, that covers the Halifax, it covers Bank of Scotland, it covers First Direct, and there's another one in there. So if you have accounts, Birmingham and China, so if you have those accounts, it's 85,000 within all accounts, I think. I think that's how it works. So potentially, you
could lose a bit there.
Yeah.
Well, we actually had a client, didn't we? Because we obviously sell a lot of off-plan property.
Yes.
Now the development doesn't complete until next year, so his final monies will be paid then. But he's actually asked if he can pay the developer the money now, the final amount, because he trusts it more with the developer's solicitor than he does
the
his own bank
institution.
Yeah.
And you think, isn't that a sad state of affairs? You're not, too trustworthy of whatever bank you're with.
But it's interesting. I mean, back in 2007 and 8, the government, I was looking, spent 137 billion to rescue the banks. Back then on it, would they have that money now if that happened?
Probably
I don't know.
Probably not, no.
Wouldn't like to rely on it. So not always the case that money in your savings account is fully.
And I think looking at that slide, 4.5%, that's probably what you could get today. But go back 6 months, and you'd be lucky to get 0.2, 0.3%. So I think the figure's unfortunately slightly misleading that you can get 4.5%. You could if it were today. Go back 6 months ago. And the other element of it, it's tied in, isn't it? A lot of these higher rates, you're tied in for a period of time. And I know property is a long-term investment, but likewise your money is tied in. If things start to go wrong within that banking industry, and it'll come onto a slide in a minute about talking about stocks and shares, and I'll talk about it then, but a number of the banking institutions, their share values over this past week, as of 10 o'clock this morning, had dipped. So you think, is this an indication of where we were talking about the positivity of Rishi Sunak coming in, if that's how we look at it, not being political? But some lenders have looked at it and have eased rates, and yet the actual bank themselves, their share value has dipped slightly. So you think, interesting.
Let's go on. Move
Carry
on.
on.
Okay. So shares. So we've now stuck our £100,000, or Mr. and Mrs. Smith, of October last year, and put their £100,000 into shares. Now there's a little bit of a caveat on this one. So overall, gross return of 8.2%. Again, with inflation, that we can see that overall over the 12 months, shares have been a loss. I have to say though that we're not experts. I'm certainly not an expert in shares, and I'm sure there are some people watching this now who may have had some success in shares. Certainly I know, well, not on a personal, but my father, I know he deals in stocks and shares. He's had good and bad this year, so he's had a little bit of both, but it is volatile. So we can see there potentially inflation beating. Average returns on stocks and shares tended to be better than interest payable on high street savings accounts. Mid-October 21, the index stood at roughly 4,124, but 12 months later dipped to 3,742. That's a drop of just over 9.2%. However, average dividends had the effect of raising the total return to 8.22% year on year, but in this case still below inflation. So still a loss.
I think it's such a massive market as well, isn't it? This one, there's such a range. I mean, this is an average, isn't it, that we've taken on it? But there'll clearly be some real big winners and real big losers.
Right,
I was looking, I mean, I know energy companies such as BP and Shell have done really well, which probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to people.
Well, if you look, again, just looking online this morning, 10 o'clock this morning, for just this week, so Monday to today at 10 o'clock, some of the property companies have actually, their shares have increased. So the highest out of the top 20 risers, we've got the likes of Kingfisher, which is Home Improvements B&Q, Barratt's, Persimmon, and then the energy companies likes of Harbour Energy, Centrica. They're the highest risers this week.
In line with the rates increasing, you mean, is that?
It didn't actually say, Mike. It just said these are the shares that have gone up the most this week. And by 2% in 3 days. So you think, if you've got your 100k in there in 3 days, you might have made 2,000 on it, and maybe that's where your broker comes in. And I think if you dabble yourself, for a lot of people, I think it is a dabble. But if you have a good broker who moves your money around a lot, that's maybe where you're getting the sort of figures we've been talking about.
But Mike, you've done a little bit, haven't you, on the brokerage side?
A very small amount. Not successfully. I tried to. I started out a few years ago doing a little bit. But for me it was far too complex. I got a few tips, some came good, some didn't. But these figures that we're putting up there, they represent a balanced portfolio. A lot of the success stories are not gambles, but close to it. You're not really fully understanding everything about the levers within that market. From a property side, we do a lot of research in the background on demographics, corporate movements, new movers to a market, the amount of supply on a market, the amount of demand for a market. We fully understand that. I'm sure there's a lot of brokers in shares that understand the same thing related to share prices. But we know our market very, very well, and that's something that.
But plus, these react so quickly, don't they, to any sort of change.
Yes.
Whereas property and things like that, it takes much longer and not as dramatic with it. It's like when the pandemic hit. I'm sure there was some shares that significantly dropped with it.
And some that improved significantly.
Probably,
the pharmaceutical industry.
AstraZeneca,
AstraZeneca, that's one of the shares that have gone up this week, AstraZeneca.
But property, strangely, sort of went up, didn't it? And a lot didn't expect it to with it. So.
Well, our property, a lot of our property is corporate. So we've got a big corporate, a lot of corporate partnerships out there with big companies. Now, it's only a small percentage of actual big companies that stopped working through the pandemic. And actually, a lot of them needed to travel. So people in the NHS, we were putting people up in the NHS that needed to self-distance from their families. You have supermarket workers, you have delivery drivers, people working for Amazon and things like this. The market actually, our occupancy rates dropped to about 72%, which is still miles above what you need to make short-term lets work ahead of standard ASTs. So for us, it was a positive time.
Do you see it a bit, Tyler, of people taking money out of shares and putting it into property, from a mortgage side? Is that something that comes with it?
That I've dealt with particularly, no. No doubt that it does happen. We're dealing with a lot of foreign investors at the minute. Where they're getting their funds from? Have they been investing in shares in their market? Have been investing in property in their market, and then now deciding to sling the money over into the UK and invest in the UK property market? Then yeah.
I'm just going to interject here. We've had just a couple of polls were going on that I didn't see previously. Just very quickly, go back a few slides ago. Would you pay more for a haunted house? No, 57%. Yes, 42%. So no's have it there.
The nose.
The no's have
the
it.
nose to the right.
Surprises me.
We have got a poll going on at the minute in chat. I see that would you invest in shares just in general? Yes or no? Simple there. So we'll obviously get the results of that. Previously we had would you invest in crypto, of which 75% said yes. 25% said no.
We're coming to that slide, aren't we?
We are going to come to crypto.
That might shock you.
We shall see. So let's move on and let's see what else we've got or we can do with our £100,000. So gold. So gold, shiny, sparkly gold. Everybody loves gold. A little bit of gold. Certainly the architects in Dubai seem to absolutely love it. But over the past 12 months, what would we see if we invested? So over the 12 months, our Mr. and Mrs. Smith have bought a shed load of gold, or certainly £100,000 worth, of which they got a 13% decrease or percentage drop in return over real-time loss. £100,000 in gold, October 2021, started with a value of $1,914 per ounce, but declined to a price of $1,655 12 months later. Minus 13% fall in value before we've even taken account of inflation.
It's not had a good year, gold.
No, and it's been so reliable in previous years, and they've seen really good increases. I shouldn't really say this, but it's going to bounce back. You would imagine.
Oh, there was something again looking on the internet today, and you can't always believe what's on the internet. They were talking about the gold price for 2023, and it's dependent on, against the US dollar. Gold seems to be very dependent on how the dollar's performing.
Yeah.
So they reckon US dollar, inflation, interest rates, and geopolitical concerns, which I guess are like the war in Ukraine and so forth. Yeah. So they were indicating that it may not bounce back in 23 because of those 4 points. But
because I had read it's now known as a bear market.
Yes, bear market,
which is whereby people are encouraged to sell, which clearly it probably isn't a good sign if that's what it's saying. So yeah, but similar to you, the strength in the dollar, the rise in interest rates seems to have contributed to fall.
To the fall in it.
Overall, it just shows that another sort of sensitive area of where you put your money and a bit of a gamble really about how quick it could go.
Like a lot of investments, it's something that you individually, the 4 of us here and Tyler and people watching, can't actually influence. You put money into gold, property, we'll go on to stocks and shares, we've talked about whiskey. You put it into that, and it's very dependent upon market forces, isn't it? That you can't personally influence. Apart from maybe property, you can influence the value by what you do with the property. You own a bar of gold, that's what you've got. It sits there. You can polish it maybe, but they reckon if you polish it, it takes a fraction off, doesn't it? Whereas property, you can improve its value.
How you rent it,
yes.
Who you rent it to, how you dress it, whether it's furnished or not, who your target market is.
But also, how easy is your exit strategy with such as gold? If you did want to sell up, is it just as straightforward as that?
I don't know. Do you go to the bank with your kilo? I don't know what they want.
Well, it's a commodity. It's something that you can go and sell pretty much at any time. You hold the gold.
Value, isn't it? Wait, so that you're just going to sell what you've got.
Do you go to the bank?
Who's actually buying that from you?
Well, who do you want to buy?
Actually, there's traders out there that'll always buy it. Will always buy
jewelers.
it.
Some jewellers will buy it.
Jewellers will buy it.
Because they will buy the jewellery that is gold or silver.
You can buy Krugerrands, can't you? The Krugerrands, South African, like the African gold, so gold bullion, etc. Coin. We've got another poll in chat there. Would you invest in gold? Absolutely, it's gold, or no thank you, I'll take the cash. We'll see how that comes out when we get the results in on that.
I think it's probably one of those as well. If you did get lucky, so to speak, you could make big money quickly.
Yeah.
That maybe you can't as much with property. We're talking about a long-term thing with property, whereas this could jump significantly, couldn't it, over a very short space of time. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that have done really well from it.
There's not that many investment classes that we're going to look at today that have got more than one revenue stream. I.e., with property, you can make money out of growth by refinancing, and the second, you get money out of the rental income.
Yep.
And actually, it's very split. I mean, I get people that come to me and say, yields are real. Yields money in your bank every month. But then a lot of people favour the growth option, particularly those that have made a lot of money in London in previous years. So, but there's not that many. Yeah, okay. There's you can make a win with some of these, but no, you have two completely different streams.
So we need to be building property out of gold.
Yes, that'd be a third stream.
We've got the results in on would you invest in shares? No, 60%. Yes, 40%. So 60% of people say no, they shouldn't be investing in shares at the minute. So we'll see what the gold comes out at shortly. Right, cryptocurrency. Again, I'm going to put in a bit of a caveat here on this one. Again, we're not experts in cryptocurrency, and we or our hypothetical Mr. and Mrs. Smith only bought Bitcoin on this. So they bought £100,000 worth of Bitcoin in October last year. In October of this year, they made a 66% loss, real-time loss, 66%. In October 2021, Bitcoin was worth $57,355. This month it stands at $19,000, or just over $19,000, marking a drop of over 66%. Bitcoin peaked in November 2021, but thereafter investors lost confidence and many well-known crypto coins plummeted in value. This shows a good example of investing in something without any knowledge. Many lesser known cryptocurrencies still provide decent solid returns. It's advisable to speak to an expert. Now I just want to say, as I said, we've only looked at Bitcoin. There are other cryptocurrencies, and quite a few. I'm sure there's people watching in chat that have gone, clamouring at the screen saying, but I've made money. But overall, this Bitcoin itself was a loss. It's very volatile.
You could have made a lot of money previously if you'd have bought it early. And that's the same maybe with some of the others, but the others aren't Bitcoin. It's a bit of a risk. But I always go back to, I watched a programme on Netflix recently about Bitcoin. And at the end of the show, and it was all very, very positive, and at the end of the show, there was an expert on there about Bitcoin, a Bitcoin expert and enthusiast. And somebody asked him, should I invest my money now in Bitcoin? And he said, yes, you should. And he said, how much should I buy? And he said, only buy what you are willing to lose. Yeah. What kind of an investment's that?
Yeah. That's the same as gambling.
Yeah. And he said, buy it, but only if you're willing to lose it.
You were saying the other day as well, Mike, about how you don't actually physically get anything. With a property, you've got the kitchen, or you can actually touch keys, you can sell furniture,
bricks,
all sorts. Yeah,
most of money nowadays is just a digit on a screen,
and that's what crypto is, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And actually, if you put all of their people and their net worths together in the world, there's not enough cash for them to take out what they're worth.
Well, that's what happened to Northern Rock, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what crashed Northern Rock.
They're just figures.
Yeah.
So
not for the guy that lost his laptop in Newport. Do you remember the guy?
Yeah.
So there was a guy who lost his laptop in 2013 with 8,000 bitcoins on, and it's now in a landfill site near Newport. We've lost everybody on screen now. They're all driving off to Newport.
That's why you were late again.
I've been staggering around a landfill site in Newport. Today, that laptop, if anybody can find it, will be worth over £144 million.
Is this the guy that was crowdfunded?
Yeah, I think
raise the money to get the council to open the tip up for him.
I believe he approached the council and offered them 50% if they would allow him onto the landfill and stop all action so he could look for it, and they said no, they turned that down. From last look at that story. So somewhere in Newport landfill there's a laptop with 8,000 bitcoins over 144 million.
I think there's quite a few stories of this, isn't it? You put it in a wallet and you lose the wallet.
Not from my point of view, I'm telling you, I'm not losing that wallet.
I don't know.
Just now imagine how many dirty nappies he's got to wrestle to get past to get to the.
I remember it.
I'm quite happily.
I'll help him.
I remember a developer that we were selling for a few years ago, and him being offered Bitcoin by a client.
Yes.
Not plan purchase. He said, "I'll put instead of the 50% cash in, he was going to pay by Bitcoin." And I remember saying it to the developer, "Look, he's put this offer forward." And he said, "No, I'm not accepting
No way.
that."
No way.
He would have made a lot of money, that developer, if he had accepted that Bitcoin 4 years ago on that. So, yeah, it's timing, isn't it?
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But it's probably not environmentally friendly, Bitcoin, is it? It uses some like 1,500 kilowatt hours of electricity.
Yeah, that's true if you're mining it.
Yeah. And mining being a generic term for it.
Yeah.
America is the most mined country, or the country that does the most mining.
Yeah.
And it's all relative to the energy cost. And I was looking at this again this morning. I did a lot of work on this morning. Cheapest place to mine a Bitcoin, Kuwait, about $1,500 because the electricity is so cheap there.
Yeah.
Most expensive place, Venezuela. Unfortunate for Venezuela, but you're looking at 245,000, and these are dollars, to mine one Bitcoin. And when we're looking at the value of Bitcoin, it's not worth mining, is it? The electricity cost must be immense. And the people who mine have so many machines running that the heat they generate is one issue, and obviously the use of electricity is the other issue. From an eco point of view, it's not particularly good currency.
Couple of links to articles in chat there. Thank you, Abby. Just about Bitcoin or about cryptocurrencies there for you to read if you want.
This is where Tyler tells us he's made thousands off crypto. He's had money in Bitcoin.
I wouldn't be here if I had.
Yeah.
Still be working for someone else.
Let's move on. So, rare whiskies. I suppose a little bit of fun this one, but in actual fact, turns out that over the course of the last 12 months, whiskies have produced an overall, in general, gross return of about just under 20%. And obviously with inflation, this is a real-time win for our Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That's assuming they haven't drunk it. It wouldn't be myself. I'm not a big fan of whiskey. That's due to a story when I was a lot younger, but we won't get into that today. Average price of 100 iconic collector's bottles has risen by over 385% since December 2012. In just the 12 months to October 2022, the average value rose by just under 20%, 19.81%. 100,000 pounds in rare whiskies, October 21 to October 2022, return of £19,810, substantially higher than the CPI rate of inflation. A few negatives. Market is again, rather like many of them, rather volatile. Same index at the time of writing, average values had fallen by minus 2.47% over the course of the last month. And the market has also sometimes stayed relatively static between 2018 and December 2019. In chat, would you invest in whiskey? You're darn tooting I would, or no thank you.
Interesting again. It's a bit like property.
Yeah.
It's all about, for property, it's location, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whiskey, it's the brand.
Yeah.
It's the distillery that makes it. And the best performing is Macallan, then Ardbeg. And it goes down the ranking. So yes, you might buy an 18-year-old Macallan.
Is Macallan the best ranking? Is it really? Is it? Okay.
Yeah. It's worth, if you have an 18-year-old bottle or a 25-year-old bottle, worth hanging on to. And the attraction of whiskey when it's bottled, that's it. It's not going to deteriorate. Whereas wine, which our hypothetical Mr. and Mrs. Smith do own a winery. Over which they're having a dispute at the moment, spat over.
Yeah, I remember you saying about this.
Yeah, Brad Pitt is very much into winemaking,
Uh-huh.
and it's a very successful winery for them. But on whiskey, it's all about the brand.
Yeah.
So you could go and buy a fairly average one, which won't perform. Just some interesting stats. How many bottles a second are produced? This is Scottish whiskey we're talking about.
Scottish whiskey.
How many bottles a second?
50.
44 a second.
Oof.
How much is it worth to the Scottish economy?
I'm trying to read your notes, Andrew.
What, per year or per?
Per year, 4.9 billion.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's 70% of the Scottish food and drink export economy.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
Well, I'm half Scottish. I'm not a big fan of whiskey. Are you, I know you go up to Scotland quite a lot. Are you a
I'm
whiskey
there next
man?
week. I am indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Having said that, I did buy some Welsh whiskey the other day, Aberfoyles. We should maybe promote a certain brand. There are other brands available.
Well, you never know. We might have freebies.
Yeah, Aberfoyles. Very nice.
Which one was that?
Aberfoyles.
Okay.
Did you want to say it again? Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah, I know I'm very partial to a dram or two.
I was dealing with somebody recently who was looking at buying property, who decided to buy and invest into whiskey instead. But before he invested, he spoke to an expert who said, look, whiskey has done very well in the last 2 years. Generally, it is cyclical, that cyclical market. And what they do is that all the hype that's generated after they've had successful years, usually people then come in secondary to the market and buy it at the higher price. And they're the people generally that lose in the market. I don't know anything about whiskey investing. I know I've sold fixed term cash investments before. I know that Phil, who works with us here, has done a lot in that as well. And we've sold a lot of artwork, wine, Algerian diamond mines, gold mines, all sorts we've had invested. Restaurants, we've done car parking spaces, these type of things. You don't physically own anything with them. You own a piece of paper.
And I suppose, is that the attraction of whiskey, wine, or classic cars? You
Could be.
You
Could
have
be,
it, you
yeah.
can go and touch it. You know, certainly a classic car, you can go and drive it if you are so insured.
And something that doesn't deteriorate, doesn't devalue in time.
Certainly once it's bottled, this is what they're saying about whiskey, once it's bottled you can sit it on your shelf, keep it cool and in a cool and dark, and it'll stay.
Yeah.
It won't mature anymore, but it's there. Keep it in the cask, and they call it the angel's share, don't they? It evaporates out the cask. So if you fill the cask, and a cask holds about, depending on the cask, about 750 bottles.
Yeah.
If you leave it in there for, say, 15 years, it could be down to 720 bottles.
Yeah.
You leave it there for 50 years, you could be down to 700 bottles. So it just evaporates. And when you go into a distillery, I don't know if any of you have, there's one in where we go, Bladnoch Distillery, you go in there and the smell is just amazing. Yeah. They have a very distinctive smell. It's phenomenal.
Just going back a few bits, we've got Rich O'Brien said, great show guys, I'm a crypto bro, but property looks far more stable to me. We've got Ian, who just loves whiskey, obviously, judging from the emojis, and more so popcorn and power tools, absolutely loves whiskey as well.
So glasses there.
Probably not a good mix, power tools and whiskey.
And I can tell you currently, we'll get the full results shortly on the whiskey polls, but currently 60% would invest in whiskey. And 40% no. So yeah, they're with you. They're with you, Andrew.
I think Mike made the point there that social media has a huge part to play, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And just talking about property, that there's a lot of negativity in the market. Going to be a property crash.
Right.
And unfortunately, I can't remember who it was. Someone did say, quite a known person, shall we say, that if you push social media, people believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they will believe the negativity. Might not be true. It's all about how you portray it. And as you said, Mike, we're not experiencing that at the moment. Our sales are still good. Our inquiries are still good. But the reverse is we've got...
That's the power of the media, though,
That's
isn't
the
it?
power of the media.
You can guarantee... Sorry, Mike. You can guarantee If there's a programme on television tonight about buying property in Bristol, tomorrow in the office we'll get 5 people phoning up asking if we buy property in Bristol. Not where's a good place to buy. You guys are the specialists. You've lived it for the last 20 years. No, we saw some guy on TV that we've no idea who he is that happened to buy in Bristol, so we're going to buy there as well. It amazes me.
Totally as an aside, there's this chap I used to know, and his sort of discussion about do you buy this, that, or the other. He's in the pub talking to someone, and the guy in the pub says, "You don't want to buy that, mate. You don't want to buy that property." Why not? Well, it's not in the right place. It's not this. It's not that. You don't want to buy property. So he would turn around and say to him, "Don't mind me asking, do you have a heart complaint?" "Actually, I do. Yeah. I've got, dicky ticker." "Well, who do you listen to about your heart complaint? Do you listen to your cardiovascular guy, your surgeon, or do you listen to the guy in the pub?" And his face changes. He says, "I listen to the surgeon." "So why do you listen to the guy in the pub about property? Unless he's an expert." And that's really what you're saying, Mike.
Exactly.
It's not just property. And I don't understand these influencers, but the influencer puts something out there, or a royal will wear a certain dress, or someone will wear a certain dress. Next thing you know, it's sold out.
Yeah.
Just the power of social media is.
I think Paul from our office made a great point a few shows ago, and he was saying normally if you hear in the media that somewhere's a hot spot, you've usually missed it.
The boat's gone.
Because it takes 3 months to get it into the press.
Yeah.
By which time every developer and every investor's tried to buy there.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen so many cities gone from being a real hotspot, genuine hotspot, to being killed off and totally oversaturated in the space of a few months, less than a year anyway. So
it's true.
Let's bring it back to first of all, Tyler, do you drink whiskey?
I am a beer man. I'm one of them. I like craft beers, but no, whiskey's okay. Some of the guys in the office, they're big fans of it, buying expensive bottles. I wouldn't invest in it. I have no idea what I'm doing. If I had to, I may. I know you Andrew, you mentioned the strategy of maybe using some of the big brands, but it'd be interesting to find out, would it be right to maybe invest in some of the distilleries that are now not in action, that have got a limited supply? Maybe, I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Gin's popular as well, isn't it? These last couple of years. Everyone seems to drink
makes its own gin as well.
Yeah.
Very good.
Andrew's on commission with them somewhere.
But you're right. The number of gin distilleries, because gin is a different. It doesn't need maturing. You don't have to. Again, for Scottish whiskey, you have to mature it for 3 years, generally in an oak cask, for it to be called Scottish whiskey.
Yeah.
So you think straight away for 3 years, it's just sat there. To get into generally a single malt, it's 8 to 12 years.
Yeah.
It's just time. Was gin, jabbing the alcohol, add a few botanicals, out it pops.
Bit of meths.
Bit of meths. You can buy off eBay a still, can't you?
Yeah.
A 5 litre still,
Okay.
and you can distill it yourself at home.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not an expert, but I believe, let's say that's the still. You don't take the bottom half and you don't take the top half. You keep what's in the middle, because the other two parts are ethanolable. They're not so good for you. And this is what the story about the Poles using potatoes in the war. That's why they went blind. You've got to be careful with it. But you can distill it at home, and it takes no maturing as such. You just distill it, and there we go.
So, Pulse on Property episode 4 will be sponsored by Andrew Brassey and Aberforth, I believe. And moving on. Mr. and Mrs. Smith now decide last year in October to look at commercial property. warehousing, office space, etc. And yeah, overall we get a 7% increase or percentage return. Obviously, with inflation over the course of the 12 months, that's a real-time loss. As the slide you can see, difficult to give average price changes in commercial property due to differing building types, i.e. retail, commercial, offices and warehousing. Agency Carter Jonas has analysed data from MSCI and concluded over the 3 months to August, capital growth was minus 3.9% for industrials, minus 1% for retail and minus 0.9% for offices. During the pandemic and lockdown, many offices, shops and other premises were left vacant, incurring costs without generating revenue. Also, rising living costs eroded consumers' willingness to spend on leisure and non-essential shopping, coupled with many businesses and employees now working from home. This had a dramatic effect on commercial rents increasing. And finally, CBRE also indicates a downward trend, writing capital values decreased minus 1.6% across all UK commercial property in August 2022.
I think commercial property in the past was always quite a safe way of doing it with property. You have a sitting tenant for 10, 15 years. Yeah, real long period.
On a full repairing lease.
Yeah, so they're always good that way. But I don't know, I mean, you made a good point, Mike, the other day about the amount of office to resi conversions we now see.
I think 9 out of the last 10 that we've sold have been resi to commercial to resi conversions.
Yeah. Which tells you there's obviously a lot of empty office blocks, and you wonder why is that, and the opportunity to turn that into residential and the demand for that side of it. It doesn't surprise me that I think it probably would still perform okay at the moment. I'm just not sure the next few years will be that case. It'd be interesting to see those figures in a couple of years.
I think it's down to usage. I think it's down to location now, because a lot of people are looking at the business parks.
Yes.
As opposed to being inside in city centres. A lot of people go into the sort of the business, retail, commercial parks of the outskirts of cities where they can get parking and they can access the office. Well, exactly what we've done here.
Yeah. Or they don't need an office full stop.
Correct.
You know, since we mentioned it again, but the pandemic, a lot realise actually we don't need office space. We can do. People can work from home and be just as effective. So
I think the one element there is warehousing. And the warehousing is on the up or has been on the likes of Amazon and DVD. You go to,
but don't they build their own rather than renting off investors, etc. So in that sense, you know,
I suppose you're right. You can't unless you invest in Amazon shares, maybe.
They've signed up to a lot in around North Manchester, haven't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Huge amount of space. I think they took the first 2 floors of the building and then ended up taking all of it.
Yeah. And if you go along the M62 to Warrington, the Gemini Park, it was going to be the world's largest tech park until the financial crash of 2008, and it's now a warehousing park, isn't it? You've got the Hut Group there, you've got Blake's, Travis Perkins, huge warehousing. Yeah. And I think that side of commercial is strong, but you're right, the office side of it.
And what about on the lending side, Tyler? Is commercial finance something you dip into, or is it more just the residential side?
Yeah, no, I don't personally do any of the residential mortgages. It's more on the buy-to-lets, the commercial, the bridging finance. Of course, there's great value to be added with commercial to residential conversions. There's great yields to be had in warehousing, in industrial units as well. Where we've seen some of the better yielding properties is where it's a shop and top scenario, or we've got downstairs commercial units and a number of flats upstairs. It's kind of a hybrid multi-unit property, but just with the commercial element downstairs. You generally pay a little bit of a higher interest rate for it, but you get the privilege of a higher overall gross yield. So yeah, a lot more popular now. A lot of portfolio landlords coming out the woodwork from the 2007 to 2009 financial crash period, where they've been sat on tracker rates. They've been hit by higher rate changes, so they're now looking to refinance these larger commercial, semi-commercial properties.
And what about lending just on the residential side, Tyler? We've seen over the years where it can be a little bit of a struggle if there's commercial property on the ground floor and residential apartments above. Has that changed? Do you expect that to change a bit and lenders being a little bit more lenient that way, or?
I would still say the majority of lenders aren't happy with commercial downstairs or being in a commercial area, but that's where, not to plug DNA or myself, but that's where you really need to have a conversation with us and find, okay, 2 in 3 lenders may not be happy with it, but some lenders are. There are some high street lenders that will do flats above commercial. They may limit LTVs in certain restriction if it's a what we call a smelly. It can be a kebab shop or a late night takeaway or a pub that can cause issues with a valuation. Then it can be a little bit of a struggle with the high street. But if it's just a co-op downstairs and flats above, or a shop, a Premier shop downstairs with flats above, then there are options. There are a lot of options, really.
Just going back to chat, Danielle put earlier, going back to whiskey, so you'll be happy, Andrew. Ben Nevis Distillery, mentioned Tyler, but the Ben Nevis Distillery did that when one was closing down, bought their remaining barrels, and now worth a fortune. They still had them there to see. So, yeah, keep hold of your whiskey. So that's commercial. We've got a poll in chat, a little bit ambiguous. It does say, have you already invested in property? Could be any property. Let us know. Yes, 100%, not yet, but I'm interested. So that's the commercial side of things. Let's take a look at, in fact, we don't know what
wasn't meant to happen.
There we go. Let's Mr. and Mrs. Smith again.
It'd be really disappointing if we don't have a residential property slide.
Yeah.
We missed that one.
In fact, we don't. Very strangely.
Well, we can talk it through.
We can, yeah.
We can talk it through. So ultimately, the residential side of things, it actually made
Mike made a really good point early on about the fact that residential property benefits from a number of different streams. You got both your growth and your income as well from it, which same can't be said for a lot of other asset classes that you can put your money into as well. We mentioned on physically owning stuff and materials involved with it as well.
And what's important at the moment, Mike? I mean, people are saying to me, I want to invest in property at the moment. What's important? Well, obviously, getting a decent return is going to be your first thing, because you don't want to be investing and subsidising something, which actually people have done in the past in certain markets like London.
Guilty of that myself.
Yeah. But one thing that we say here is having the flexibility of renting across multiple markets. So buying something that has the ability to rent on short-term lets as well as long-term lets. Being able to sell on to a homeowner. So it's something that's not purpose-built just for short-term lets or just for long-term lets. You're able to do both things. Having that flexibility will give you movement in the market, and it'll also appeal to other investors down the line. So we think in residential estates, we strongly believe that is a key thing that investors should be looking at the moment.
Yeah, well, the latest house price indices from Nationwide and Halifax put the annual rate of house price growth at 9.5% and 9.9% respectively. In other words, close to the rate of CPI rate of inflation. I think we've got some links going into chat to both of those.
Just as a side, shares, going back to the share side of it, Rightmove went up. So, the major portal, people have confidence in that portal that the share value has increased. A couple of % on that.
I think that recently, after speaking to investors, people have got a lot of confidence in property as an investment. And while they may be cutting back in other areas and they may be worried about, people worrying about their financial, how much they're earning, how much they're making, people go out and get another revenue stream. They'll go out and buy a property, a good buy-to-let or short-term let property, and get an income from it. That's what people will do. They'll use property to actually improve their situation.
Look at the guy you were talking to yesterday, today, buying into a property, producing 8% net.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about savings stocks and shares, 8% net.
Yeah.
You know, it is a revenue stream, that, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Absolutely.
You know, that 100k produces 8,000 a year, plus any capital growth of that property.
We had a landlord, didn't we, just today, who's got a couple of properties, student properties, who initially had wanted to sell them,
yes,
but has suddenly turned around and realised, actually, where else am I going to put this money in
Yeah.
and make that sort of yield? So I'm actually going to take it off the market.
very much so.
Frustrating for us, because obviously we were going to be selling the properties, but you can see how they've come to that logic.
It was a good long conversation with him, you know, without being rude, and that's what I said. You know, don't want to be rude, but what are you going to do with the money
Yeah.
when you release that cash?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it?
Mm.
Well, he said, just sit in the bank. Well, why are you selling?
Yeah.
You know, and yes, you're right. We lost potentially a sale and maybe 2 sales overall, but the discussion was retain it, take that income, that 8% net, and run with that and review it next year maybe if you can find a better use for the money. And I think that's a valid point. What are you going to do? I had this conversation numerous times in the past. What are you going to do with the money? You release that 100k, 150k, but what are you going to do with it? Gift it to your daughter to go buy a house? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Improve your own property? Absolutely. Leave it in the bank.
Buy a car.
And buy a new. Well, just tuck this aside. You know, new cars at the moment are so hard to get. They're actually going up, aren't they? But as a generalisation, the old adage was: as soon as you drove out of the showroom, it's dipping in value 10% at least.
I think you have to look as well. Some of the biggest entrepreneurs in not only the country but the world, they all invest in property, and there's a good reason why they do it. You know, the likes of Alan Sugar.
Well, the Sunday Times Rich list is built on a lot of people buying property historically, and I think. You see at times in the market where you can flip a property and make money. It's really medium to long term, and that's really how we should be. And I think, unfortunately, the market we're in today it will indicate that it has to be medium to long term. But you will make money. You will always make money. That's historical.
And that's why we have confidence in it, because you're right. We're always actually advising clients, well, you should be buying it over a long period of time. And as long as you're doing that, you will do well from property. If you're looking to flip it within a year, well, that's...
You may not.
We don't know how it is exactly going to react.
And
but
I think also, as we saw maybe 2008, where people were borrowing at 95%, even Northern Rock, and is this why Northern Rock went at 125% loan to value? You know, those days are clearly gone. If you have 30, 35%, and Tyler will probably back me up on this, if you have a good equity in the property, if it does dip in value a bit, it's not the end of the world, provided you keep it. And if you have enough or a lower loan to value, your mortgage payment will be lower, which will be covered by the rent it's producing. So you're in a safeguarded position. It's where you're stretching yourself. You've borrowed at 95% loan to value.
And that can be the fault of certain property professionals, gurus, who tell people that the traditional model is to borrow as much as you can.
And pray for inflation.
Yeah. If you borrow as much as you can and you're on the red line and that interest rate changes, you can't pay for the property anymore.
No.
You know, you can't. And you've only got one option. You walk into the bank and you throw the keys at them and say, I'm sorry, I can't. And you lose your property, your deposit, everything you put into that property. All that time.
Your credit history is...
And your credit history, So we're always very cautious to be very realistic about what we can achieve. Building a good portfolio is not a matter of having the most properties. It's a matter of having the most profitable properties. If you can have 4 properties that give you a £10,000 a month return, you're better doing that than having 400 that give you a £10,000 return. You know, so
less hassle. That's
much less hassle.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there we go.
There we are.
I
don't know if Tyler's anything to add on that. The loan to value and the sort of rates that you can achieve by putting more money in.
Yeah, of course. It's very much having the conversation with the investor themselves and then working out what their investment strategy is. We deal with investors that want to have that mortgage completely paid off for retirement, so that maybe it is retirement, or they can have that mortgage paid off so they've got an unencumbered property there that they can go and actually use to finance something like a refurbishment project, or we spoke about a commercial to residential conversion. If you have so much in equity sat there as an investor, you may find yourself not having to put any money whatsoever into doing a refurbishment project. On the other side of things, there are lenders in the market that will go up to 85% loan to value. It works for some investors, some of the high yielding properties. The pure cash flow wanting to go out and spread their deposit across multiple properties, then it can work. But yeah, you definitely have to be careful. It's not something I would specifically go, right, this is what you need to do. And only put a 15% deposit in.
Sorry, Tyler, and is there a big difference in rates on the loan to values? You know, let's say someone is going for a 70% loan to value to say 50.
Yeah,
so significantly or not so
yeah, a lot of clients are coming back and wanting that second opinion of, okay, I've got some additional cash. What happens if we put this in? If we're at 75% loan to value, the benefit that you get for, let's say, dipping down to 60% loan to value, so putting 40% deposit in or 50% deposit in, the rates don't change that dramatically. You don't get that much of a benefit. Where you do benefit is you're lending two-thirds the amount, half the amount, whatever it may be, and you benefit from the lower mortgage payments, and you've got more cash tied up into that property, which can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. When you start lending at 80% loan to value, 85% loan to value, it can get very, very not cost effective. That's why it's very common for people to just put in that 25% deposit. That's the good balance of rates. So where it was a good balance of rates. Put in a 25% deposit, and it's more cost effective overall. You don't get any benefit for putting in 40% deposit really on rate.
So ultimately, it's buy property and whiskey.
Get drunk and buy property.
Get drunk and buy property.
Yeah. But don't go to the auction to do it. Not if you had a beer too many.
So I think we should start trying the whiskey out in the office.
Should have done that
as well. Yeah. Maybe next time.
I'd run with that.
Yeah.
So drink whiskey and sell property.
Yes, just drink whiskey.
Just drink whiskey. Okay.
And don't put any water with it. It's on its own.
Yeah.
Don't put ice. Don't put water. Just on its own.
And which brand was it again?
Should we try another one?
We'll see what we can get next time.
Yes.
Exactly. So on a technical side of things, I think we're missing slides wise. We're missing a few slides. So we're going to keep it on our lovely faces, and that's why you brought me in as well.
This was the reason. Yeah.
Exactly. To be able to end it on a good note.
I think we've covered everything though on there pretty much. It's been interesting to see the different types of ways to put money in, and on a serious note, that is why we believe in residential property so much, and hopefully people watching that can.
Well, we had a bit of a fun there, but it was a serious look. We looked at those figures and ultimately layman's terms in terms of looking at a few of them. But that's how a lot of people, they don't know what they're doing.
What is your choice? We always look at comparing property to property, but sometimes it's a case of where else are you going to put that?
I've got
money?
100k. What can I do with it?
And it's just interesting to have a look at that of how it would look. So
it's good to hear that lending options are actually out there as well. Still, a lot of people would be worried about that.
And different types of products as well, like the short-term lenders. Like when we were selling short-term probably a few years ago, there was no lenders with us in that field. Now there's a lot more. So it's certainly not all doom and gloom, as Tyler will vouch for in that side of things. So
the short-term let market is now becoming, even in the eyes of the lenders, it's becoming its own industry. So more lenders month on month are coming into the market and offering those short-term letting products.
Good stuff.
Good to hear.
Right. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Tyler, this evening, or you thought was worth mentioning, or are you all good?
All good. I know it's obviously, I don't know when you want to obviously wrap this chat up, but I'm more than happy to, if anyone gets in touch with yourselves directly and they want to speak to them directly or has any questions after this, then more than willing to have a chat on the phone or over email, whatever's easier for them.
Yeah, well, it's obviously going on YouTube. People will be able to watch the replay, and I know that Abby will shortly, hopefully with a prompt from me now, will put in some details about how to get hold of you, Tyler. So your email address, website address, etc. And obviously anybody listening who have any questions, either get in contact with Tyler directly. You can view the details in chat, or indeed come through ourselves, and we'll put you in touch. Which I'm sure you've already spoke to a number of our clients already.
Yeah, we've got a bat phone directly to Tyler. He's I think he's speed dial 1 on mine for emergency. Yeah, need to speak to the broker quick. So.
But no, I mean, certainly from me and from all of us, thank you very much, Tyler, for coming on this evening.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, very much.
Thanks for having me on, gents.
No, that's been fantastic, and ultimately, that's it for episode 3 of Pulse on Property. Episode 4, as I said, will be sponsored by Aberforth and Andrew.
If you've not already subscribe to us by clicking the subscribe, and that'll notify you for future events as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
As you say, it can be watched on catch up.
It can be watched on catch up. Exactly.
YouTube catch up.
We have got in chat there as well. As I said at the beginning, we've got some other great guest speakers coming on over the next couple of months. Adam Harris, an SDLT consultant from Capex Associates, talking everything stamp duty. And we have Melissa Ellis, financial advisor, HL Financial, talking pensions. Any questions, go to our webpage, links in chat, and submit a question. I'm sure they'll be happy to help. As we said before, any questions for Tyler in the future, contact Tyler directly, contact Residential Estates. And for anything Residential Estates, contact us directly. Again, link to our website is there in chat. Phone us, email us, however you want to come to us. But from me, it's just thank you very much this evening. It's been great.
Yeah, no, thanks very much everyone for jumping on.
Thank you all. And thank you, Tyler. And we'll see you on the next one.
Good night.
Good night from me.